Well, ladies and gentlemen, buyers, good afternoon and a very warm welcome to what is sure to be another very special Harcourts Rata & Co auction at number 23, Hendersons Road in EPPING. My name is Robert Ozzimo. I proudly represent the company of Harcourts Rata & Co, and I'm joined here today by some of my award-winning colleagues in blue. Should you require their advice, please feel free to approach at any time. Andrew, Ilya, Lou, Aman, Vida. I'm sure I'm missing quite a few because I know there's quite a few of us, but there's a big crowd that we're getting lost in here today. Of course, Mr. Daniel Taylor, who is inside at the moment. We have Harry too. Mr. Daniel Taylor is inside at the moment, but who no doubt you've had the great opportunity of becoming acquainted with throughout the marketing campaign. Guys, let me share with you the following announcements which are in place to help you bid and buy with absolute confidence here today. The auction will be conducted in accordance with the rules and any additional conditions that remain available for inspection before the start of the auction. The auction rules prohibit an auctioneer from accepting bids or offers for property after the property has been knocked down to the successful bidder. The vendors have a reserve price as the auctioneer will indicate bidders on request. The law prohibits false bids, prohibits major disruptions by bidders, and prohibits bidders attempting to prevent others from bidding, and provides for fines for such conduct. The rules permit for vendor bids. The words I'll use during the auction to indicate that I'm making a bid on behalf of the vendor are vendor bid, and by law only I, as the auctioneer, can make a vendor bid. Buyers, the contract of sale has been on display prior to today's auction. We call for 10% deposit upon the fall of the hammer and the signing of that contract to take place here today, with the balance to be paid at settlement in a flexible 30 to 60 days time, at which time the vendor will provide the very lucky buyer with vacant possession of the property. All in all, quite a straightforward contract. Everything is in here. Everything is quite clear. So buyers, is with my highest recommendation what we offer for your consideration and competition here today. The only crowd that you will find bigger than here today is maybe at the polling booth, and I reckon that we've got that crowd beat, to be honest with you, and it's an indication of how hot the market is in 2025. Interest rate cuts are on their way down. So if you are looking to get you and your family into a great family home in a great family location, the one question you need to ask yourselves is, do you wait and pay for that growth down the track, or do you act decisively and put your family in the box seat here today and earn that capital growth? The decision could not be any more clear, and it's made even easier by this central location where we can walk to Parkland as close as a few houses down on either side of the street. We can visually see EPPING Station providing simple access into the city and walking distance to both primary, secondary and tertiary education, both public and private schooling, all within our fingertips. Now, if that wasn't enough for you and your family to make a comfortable living, what about the home itself? Immaculately maintained, immaculately presented, absolutely nothing to do. Multiple living zones, a free-flowing floor plan for you to grow into over the years. So buyers, it's with much anticipation that you get the opportunity now to reserve the right of putting the sold sticker up on the board. Right now, as I said, is your opportunity to do that, buyers. Where can I see a fair and reasonable starting bid for number 23 Hendersons? Who'd like to start us off? I don't mind the call, buyers. I'm in your hands. At 600, a bit light on, so we'll go with you at 6. Welcome and best of luck here today. At 600,000, fairly been offered now at 600 the bid. At 600,000, the bid's there now at 6. At 600,000, fairly been offered. Surely we didn't come here for the coffee, although it's great. At 600,000. At 50 here, at 650,000. What was that there? 650 I have here against your bid, sir. At 650,000, fairly been offered now. 70. At 70 now, I'll go with the 70 at 670,000. At 670,000, fairly been offered now, 670. At 80 got. At 680 bids here, sir, you've got to be a little bit quick. At 680,000. At 90 got now, at 690. At 690,000, 700 beckon, 7 got. At 700,000. At 700,000, fairly been offered now, 700, 710 now. At 710 and 20 got now. At 720,000, the quick retort at 20. At 720,000, fairly been offered now, 720 the bid. At 720,000 and 30, welcome. Best of luck here today at 30. At 730,000. At 730,000. At 40. At 740. At 740,000. Bid back here. Back against you at 40 now. At $740,000 the bid. At 740 the bid. At 50. Which one would like to hold the bid at 50? Welcome, sir. Best of luck at 750,000. At 750 the bid now. At 750,000. Sir, surely not at this stage. At 760,000 bids behind. Best of luck. Welcome at 60 now and 70 got at 770,000. At 770,000 and we're back here now at 80 got now at 780,000. At 780,000 can't see the back of the car. I'm a little bit too short for that. At 790 now. At 790,000 fairly been offered now at 790 at $800,000. At $800,000 fairly been offered now. Even money that. At 805, at 805,000, at 805,010, welcome sir, at 810, at 810 the bid now, 810,000, 15 got, at 815,000, at 815,000, we've been on the market for a while, haven't had the opportunity to express that, I'm not going inside, I'm not seeking further instructions from our vendor, 815,000, the bids here, the keys are here, at 20 now, bids here, keys are here now, at 825 now, welcome sir, at 825 the bid, at 825, at 825,000 bid there, keys are there, we're on the market, we sell, no second chances here today, 30 got now, at 835, at 835 the bid now, at 835,000, back in the centre, opportunity everywhere else in the crowd, at 835,000. At 40 now, at 840, was that with you, sir? Welcome back at 840, at 840,000, at 840,000. As I was saying, we're on the market, we sell, no second chances, we play for keeps, we sell here today. If there's no further bid, we'll sell at that at 840. 841, why not at 841? 842. At 2, at 842, 3. What was that, sir? I have 843? 850 at 850,000 at 850,000 best response to a small bid, so it's always a big one. 852 now at 852,000 behind. Is that with you, Mavita? At 852 at 852,000 at 852,000 fairly been offered now. 852 the bid at 860,000. Welcome back, sir. At 860,000 at 860,000 862 at 862,000 bids back here now at 862. Keys are there, bids there. 862 the bid. First call at 862,000. Are we done? Second call. 863. Welcome back, sir, at 863. At 4. At 864. 5. At 865,000. At 66, 67, 68, 69. At 70, even better. At 870, at 75. At 875, the bid. At 78. At 878,000. 80. At 880,000. 81 now. At 881. At 85. 86. At 886,000. 87 at 887 at 887,000 bids there, keys are there at 887 now at $887,000 the bid for the first call at 887,000, all done. Second call at 887, done, finished. Third, final call, $887,000 the bid. Are we done? Are we finished? Silent, out, 887,000. So we're done over here. Thank you very much for your bid in there, sir. At 900,000, way to come back in, sir. Not only did you come back in, you did it with absolute style. At 900,000, even money now. At 901, at 901,000, at 901,000, the bid's back here now. At 901, they've got the keys. At 902, at 902,000, at 902,000, at 903, at 903, at 903,000, fairly been offered now. At 903, the bid. At 903,000, at 903,000, are we done over here at 903? Sir, we done there. At 900, thank you very much for your bid. At 903,000, sir, bids there. Give me a big bid now. At 903, take me to 10. At 903,000, fairly been offered. 903 the bid. Bids there, keys are there. I'll sell if there's no further bidding here today. At 903,000 on the market. At 908. At 908,000. At 908,000, bid back there now, 908. At 908,000, can I say 10 in the rise? At 900. At 909, at 909,000, at 909 the bid, got him down to $1,000 bid, sir, cause for optimism, push on, at 909, at 909,000, we're done here, sir?
Yeah, we're done.
We're definitely done, thank you very much for your bidding here today. At 909,000, bids there, keys are there, we're on the market, we sell, at 909 the bid, first call, at 915 and a great bid at that at 915,000. Don't let it scare you off. It's just a big bid. You can make one too. At 915, the bid's there. Opportunity with you, but the keys are there as it stands. At $915,000 now. At 915, the bid. At 915,000, we're definitely done over here. Done there, sir. At 915, thank you once more. At 916, at 916,000, fairly been offered now. 916, the bid. Bid's back there again. At $916,000. At $916,000, are we done now, sir? At $916,000 for the first call, at 916, all done. Second call at 916,000. Done. Finished. Third, final call, 916 the bid. All done. All finished. All silent and out at $916,000. Last chance, if you're here to buy, bid me now or forever hold your peace. We're on the market. We sell. 916 bids there. Daniel, if that's a bid forthcoming, I need to know at 916,000. At 916 fairly been offered over here. So if you're considering throwing your hat into the ring, you haven't got much time to do so. I need to know now. At 916,000, yes or no? At 916. Insert no. At 916,000 once. At 916 twice. Third, final call, 916 the bid. So we're definitely done. Thank you for your spirited bidding here today. At 916,000, first, second, third, final call at 916. All done, all finished, silent and out at 916. We're selling, selling, selling. Absolutely sure, sir. Sold. Congratulations and well bid. Guys, please join me in congratulating our purchasers and our vendors here today. You've just witnessed another successful Harcourts, Rata & Co auction. Have a great